C51. It was at this moment that Lu Xuanchen, who was the manager, saw that Tang Zhu was surrounded by a group of people, and hurriedly handed over her bag. Wow, this is the man behind Tang Zhu, the handsome manager? He really is handsome. At this moment, some of the female fans were extremely excited when they saw Lu Xuanchen's appearance. Tang Zhu immediately pretended to be concerned and asked, "Sulu, are you all right? There are too many people here. Did you step on them?" "Yeah, I've been stepped on often today. There's nothing I can do about it." The fans are really too excited. Do you understand? In such a chaotic situation, Tang Zhu didn't forget to show her positive image at all times. Someone at the side immediately praised, "Listen carefully." Tang Zhu's voice, it's very gentle. She's much prettier than on TV. Her figure is so good. Her skin is so white. As Tang Zhu listened to the fans' praises and flattery, the corners of her mouth rose even higher. Tang Yu was supported by Lu Xuanchen to help his walk out. Just now, Tang Zhu had used his strength to step on her, and with the tip of his high heels, he directly stepped on her toes. Tang Yu felt that his toes were about to break, and it was so painful that her eyes started to turn red. If Lu Xuanchen didn't support her, it would really be difficult for her to walk. Just as the lobby on the first floor of the restaurant was in a state of chaos, the elevator doors for VIPs opened. The 6 bodyguards that came out from the inside immediately walked out, using their tall and imposing bodies to forcefully block the way. Immediately afterwards, a tall and elegant figure casually walked out from the elevator. Compared to the messy scene at the side, at that moment, Jik Xiaohan's movements was not obstructed at all. His appearance shocked everyone present. Oh my god! There's actually such a handsome man in this world. Who is he? Her figure is so good, and she's so pretty. Jik Xiaohan's eyes were ice cold, but unknowingly, he saw Tang Yu who was half leaning in Lu Xuanchen's embrace. The cold and sharp eyes were like daggers as they glared hatefully at the two men's entwined hands. The man's expression was like the omen of a storm, gloomy to the extreme. Jik Xiaohan's appearance instantly suppressed the existence of Tang Zhu, the number one sister in the entertainment circle. "Zhu, leave quickly." Lu Xuanchen took the chance and quickly brought the two out of the hall and towards the car. The reason why Tang Zhu wasn't willing to leave was naturally because she was staring at Jik Xiaohan, who was already on the carriage with infatuation. She did not expect Jik Xiaohan to not even look at her. How could this happen? Just now, she clearly saw Jik Xiaohan looking over, but his gaze was looking at Tang Yu. Could it be that Jik Xiaohan had really taken a fancy to Tang Yu when they were eating upstairs? Jealousy rose up from within his heart, like a surging tide. Tang Zhu shot a resentful gaze at Tang Yu who was beside him, whose face was pale from the pain. Even though she had a painful expression, her beautiful face caused Tang Zhu to feel that it was extremely eye-piercing. Tang Yu was one of those pure girls. Her eyes were beautiful and always gave off an innocent glow. "Zhu, hurry up and get on the carriage." Lu Xuanchen was already sweating so much that he anxiously asked for it. "Xuanchen, Tang Yu and I are going back to the Tang family, you go first." Tang Zhu immediately walked towards the driver's seat. However, Tang Yu said coldly, "I'll go in Han Qingqi's car, you go first." Tang Zhu was willing to drive Tang Yu home because he wanted to keep an eye on her and not give her the chance to see Jik Xiaohan. Although her actions were very childish, she couldn't care less. When she thought about meeting Jik Xiaohan, all the cells in her body tensed up, and her nerves felt like it was about to break. No, she must chase Tang Yu out of the country and not let her appear in this city. Otherwise, even if he dodged today, he wouldn't be able to dodge tomorrow. Tang Yu even sat on Lu Xuanchen's car and left. She really hated Tang Zhu to death. Tang Zhu couldn't even concentrate when she was driving. He kept staring at the car behind him. The fear in her heart became stronger and stronger. Just as they were about to reach the Tang family household, Tang Zhu's car, because she wasn't focused enough, crashed into a fence that was right next to the garden. Tang Zhu was so scared that she almost died. Her two hands tightly gripped the steering wheel. Only then did she realize that she was so nervous that her entire body was covered in cold sweat. Lu Xuanchen hurriedly ran over to his and asked if she was injured. Tang Zru opened the door of the car. Her body was stiff, but her gaze was focused on Tang Yu, who had also just got off the car. "Follow me." Tang Zru's footsteps were messy but fast. Tang Yu frowned, and quickly followed her into the Tang clan's main entrance. "Where's my dad?" Tang Yu had not seen her father for a long time. This time, because she hated Tang Zru and her daughter, she had never gone back to her home. "He went on a trip abroad with my mum. I arranged everything. I'm my dad's pride now." Tang Zru smiled proudly. "Is that so?" Tang Yu shamelessly ridiculed, "But you were once the Si Sheng envy that further could not see the light of day." "Tang Yu, my mom is already married to father now. I'm no longer Si Sheng envy." Tang Zru immediately growled in anger. "It used to be." Tang Yu laughed coldly as he rebutted back. Tang Zru threw the bag in her hands onto the sofa, then turned and ran up the stairs. Tang Yu looked at this familiar yet unfamiliar home. It had already changed greatly, and it was no longer the old furniture from back then. In Tang Yu's heart, an indescribable pain began to emerge. Since her mother's death, she had rarely lived in this house, and had always lived in the house of her maternal grandma. She had no home for a long time. She carried a bag in her hands, and after running down, she directly threw it in front of Tang Yu. "Take it away. These unlucky things, no matter how far it is, don't leave it at home. Just look and you'll be out of luck." C52. Author, Xiao AI. Genre, Romance. Update time, the 20th of December 2019, 13:21 and 32 seconds. Tang Yu ignored her unpleasant words, squatted down, and carefully opened the bag. "What about the gold jade? You took it?" Tang Yu checked once again and found that there was one thing missing. It was something that she had seen before. Her mother would often place the jade around her neck, saying that it was meant to be given to her when she grew up. Tang Zru actually knew where the jade was going, but she didn't say it out loud, as she wanted to make Tang Yu feel sad and miserable. "You want me to go abroad? Return me money?" "How could you be so kind?" Tang Yu did not believe that this woman had discovered his kindness and wanted to treat her as though she was his little sister. "Don't ask, just say if you agree or not." "If you agree, I'll immediately go look for it and have someone send you some money right away." Tang Zru's face changed, and her tone became anxious as she asked. Tang Yu laughed coldly. "And if I don't agree?" "If you don't agree, then you will never be able to get back that piece of jade. Furthermore, I can tell you this for sure, as long as I stop you, you won't even be able to get a decent job in the country." Tang Zru threatened in an extremely cruel and merciless manner. Tang Yu froze. She did not expect Tang Zru to be so vicious, to actually want to force her into such a state. Actually, Tang Yu had already guessed a little of what Tang Zru was planning. "Is it related to Jixiao Han?" Tang Yu had to ask clearly. Tang Zru's scalp went numb, and she looked like she had been beaten up. She was unhappy in every place, and she said coldly, "What does it have to do with him? I just don't want to see you. I hate you." "Tang Zru, why do you have such achievements today?" "Or, who did you rely on? He was the one who brought you to your current position." Tang Yu laughed sarcastically. Every word she said was like a knife, slicing through Tang Zru's weak nerves. Her hands and feet were cold, her heart was pounding, her eyes were staring straight at Tang Yu. She could not believe that she had actually guessed the relationship between the two of them. Seeing that she did not speak, Tang Yu's face swelled green and white. He knew that his guess was right. "The rumors said that you are Jixiao Han's girlfriend, and that he contributed a lot to make you his big star." Just now in the dining hall, Jixiao Han said that he wanted me to go to his private room to drink with him, so you turned anxious and said that he wanted to return my mother's things to me. "Tang Zru, are you afraid?" Tang Yu crossed his arms in front of his chest, looking calm and composed, but every one of her words caused Tang Zru's face to turn even paler. "Tang Yu, who do you think you are? Do you really think that the quarterly would take a fancy to your ordinary posture?" "What am I afraid of? Right now, I am the most popular female celebrity. My ability to earn money can already compare to a money printing machine. I have money and am beautiful. What kind of man do I want? That's right, Jixiao Han is indeed a very perfect man, but I believe that the moment I use my fingers, he will still look at me in a new light. When Tang Zru spoke, she deliberately lifted her chin, proving that every word she said was very confident. Tang Yu frowned, and then sneered, "Really?" When Jixiao Han went downstairs just now, if I didn't see wrongly, he seemed to. He didn't even look at you. Isn't he your financial backer? Why is he so cold to you? Tang Yu was simply sprinkling salt on Tang Zru's wound. It was so painful that her face was twisted. She roared furiously. Tang Yu, what exactly do you want to say? However, Tang Yu's aura was even more imposing than hers, and she said coldly, "If you don't return what belongs to me, I won't let you live an easy life." When Tang Zru heard these words, her aura immediately dissipated, and she immediately pretended to be wronged and helpless. "Yulong, we are at least half-sisters now, can't you help me?" "Tang Zru, I am not your sister, and you have never treated me as your sister either." At this point, stop putting on an act. Your pitiful and wronged face will only make me want to puke in front of the fans who are praising you. I don't understand why you did not return the gold inlaid jade that my mother left me. Tang Yu really couldn't understand. She felt that Tang Zru was purposely not giving it to her. Her thoughts were too vicious. "I'll be honest with you. I'll give you the jade pendant," Tang Zru suddenly said. "Who did you give it to?" Tang Yu was instantly enraged. "I'm not telling you. But anyway, that jade pendant might not be able to be retrieved in the future, so I'll compensate you with money." "How much is it?" Tang Zru said righteously. "Do you think it's amazing that you're rich? That's something my mother left for me. How can you just give it away like that?" Tang Yu was about to explode. "You left the country 5 years ago. I thought you didn't want these trash anymore, but now my friend likes them. So what if he gives them away?" "It's not worth a lot of money," Tang Zru said with disdain. "Tang Zru, you are going too far. Let me warn you, immediately take back my jade pendant, if not, I will go outside to ruin your reputation." Tang Yu was very angry. C-53, bad on my reputation, with just you? Tang Zru felt that he was being too serious. "You know that I have a lot of reporters who like to create trouble from nothing. If you want to ruin my reputation, I'm afraid that I will make you suffer even more from the scoldings." "Oh, you're really not going to return what I gave you, are you?" Tang Yu knew that he was weaker in comparison to Tang Zru, who was currently in Big Star. When Tang Yu went to Jixiao Han's villa last time, he talked about Tang Zru's situation with his. Tang Yu's mind was also bright. She suspected that Jixiao Han had something to do with Tang Zru, and it was definitely an inside story. But now, Tang Zru was so afraid that she would see Jixiao Han and be chased out of the country. "Why does he want you to save him?" "How ridiculous." "It's getting more and more polite as you talk about it." Tang Zru didn't want to admit it even if she was beaten to death. That night, the woman that Jixiao Han slept with was Tang Yu. She really hoped that it was herself, because I felt that Jixiao Han was not right. He might have been drugged. When she woke up, he only saw the man's wristwatch and the suit jacket. She had taken that wristwatch, and it was quite expensive, but it was definitely not something that could be bought from the market, so it was obvious how rich a man who could wear that watch could be. Of course, she no longer needed to doubt him, as the child was almost 4 years old, and Jixiao Han had personally tested his DNA, so the child was his. Tang Zru finally understood why Jixiao Han had slept with Tang Yu 5 years ago. He had actually slept with her while his consciousness was still unclear. How could her life be so good? He had been beaten half his life away, but he was still able to be slept in by a perfect and outstanding man like Jixiao Han. Tang Zru was so angry that she clenched her fists tightly. "Tang Yu, what exactly do you want?" "Return the jade to me, give me another 50 million. And I'll go abroad. I definitely won't have any contact with you or Jixiao Han anymore." Tang Yu actually also had her own plans and considerations. She didn't expect that the day after returning home, her own father would come knocking on her door, and now he still wanted to take away her child. Of course, she had to think of a way to quickly leave. Is that true? Will you really go abroad at once?" "I only need to give you 50 million. And I just need to return you that piece of jade," Tang Zru thought that Tang Yuyu would definitely go and tell Jixiao Han the truth. She was scared to death, but Tang Yuyu's words still shocked her. Of course Tang Yuyu wanted to go abroad. As long as she had the money to raise 2 children, she would really wish that she could never come back again in her life. Yes, I will immediately go abroad and never disturb the good things between you and Jixiao Han. As a woman's intuition, Tang Yuyu loved Jixiao Han so much. When they were at the dining hall, her actions made it seem as if she was looking at Jixiao Han, causing Tang Yuyu to suddenly feel pity. Jixiao Han obviously did not respond to her feelings. She was only singing a one-man show. Tang Yuyu, don't lie to me. Just now you have also seen how perfect and outstanding Jixiao Han is. I don't believe that, as a woman, you can resist his charm. Tell me honestly, are you trying to cheat me of my money? Tang Zru truly could not believe that Tang Yuyu had turned a blind eye to his charisma. Tang Yuyu curled his lower lip, and said with ridicule and disdain, Tang Zru, do I have to like the man you like? Jixiao Han looks very average. I didn't realize how attractive he was, and even gave me a cold look. I don't want it. This was the first time Tang Zru had heard someone give such a terrible evaluation of him. She was extremely shocked. Suddenly, he wondered if Tang Yuyu's brain was flooded. Are these really your own words? Don't talk about it, and think about her secretly. If I find out that you took my money and have all sorts of opportunities to hook up with him, I won't let you go. Tang Zru looked at Tang Yuyu's serious and determined expression, and could only believe her words. But she was still a little suspicious. According to her knowledge, all the things around her that were strange to her, would cause her eyes to light up when she saw Jixiao Han. Tang Yuyu sneered with a face full of arrogance. Don't worry, I don't want to see this man ever again in my entire life. I hate him. Tang Zru was stunned yet again. Why do you hate him? Tang Zru was getting more and more curious. As long as Tang Yuyu did not fight with him over Jixiao Han, her hostility towards her would be reduced by a lot. No reason. Just because he hurt me 5 years ago, I, as a person, hate evil as if it were an enmity. I will never forgive anyone who wants to hurt me in this life. Tang Yuyu's beautiful eyes were filled with resentment as she spoke with indignation. You think being slept in by Jixiao Han is a very disadvantageous thing? Tang Yuyu, I realize that you are really a little ridiculous. Do you know how many women want Jixiao Han to sleep with them? If what Tang Yuyu said was all in her heart, Tang Zru would actually admire her a little. C54. Tang Yuyu never thought that Tang Zru, who was so proud like a peacock, would also be proud of being sleeping with Jixiao Han. I'm too lazy to say this to you. Whenever you give me the jade pendant and money, I'll go abroad. Tang Yuyu felt that Tang Zru was completely poisoned and that there was no cure. The money will be transferred to your account tomorrow morning. Send me your account number, and I will immediately go and get your jade pendant back from that person. It's best if you leave tomorrow. Don't waste any time. Tang Zru's tone towards Tang Yuyu became slightly better. After Tang Zru finished speaking, she had already printed out a copy and listed all the conditions she had mentioned. Sign it. As long as you don't fight with me for Jixiao Han, I can still recognize you as my sister. Tang Zru's attitude had changed 180%, because she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. She had been afraid for 5 years, and this was the first time she felt relaxed. Forget it. I've never thought of you as my sister. Tang Yuyu didn't want to get close to her. Tang Zru's face became ugly. Tang Yuyu, I really don't know where you get your pride from. I'm willing to treat you as my younger sister, which also means that I'm a tolerant person. Tang Yuyu snorted coldly, ignoring her. After signing her name, she stood up and took the things that her mother had left behind and left. As Tang Zru looked at the agreement, the corner of her mouth hooked up into a victorious smile. With the protection of this agreement, she could sleep peacefully. Tang Yuyu would no longer have the face to come and fight with her for Jixiao Han. After Tang Zru put away the agreement, she immediately called a friend of hers. If she remembered correctly, she was the one who took the jade all those years ago. The call connected and a sweet voice rang out. Yo, Big Star finally remembered to come find me. Huiyi, do you remember when you took a piece of jade from my house 5 years ago? Tang Zru directly asked. When Jiang Huiyi heard her mention that piece of jade, Her mind immediately tensed up and she couldn't help but deny, "What kind of jade is it?" "I don't remember." "How could you not remember? Back then when you seemed to like it, you begged me to give it to you." "I'm in urgent need. Hurry up and send it over." "Xru, you really remembered wrongly." "I didn't take that piece of jade. Moreover, I've never seen that piece of jade either." Zhang Hui immediately said with a wrong tone. "It was you who took it." "I clearly remembered it." "Hurry up and find it. Bring it back to me tomorrow morning." "This matter is very important to me." Tang Xru was already a little angry. She was actually unable to take back the things that he had gifted her. How could she not be angry? Zhang Hui heard the sound of the phone being hung up, and her entire body froze. Zhang Hui, being unwilling to take out that piece of jade, was also hiding a huge secret. A year ago, she saw an opportunity when she was in a museum and saw an identical golden jade pendant that she had taken out from Tang Xru's house. At that time, the curator was right beside her and told her that the golden jade pendant was given to her by an old man from a wealthy family who lived in the museum. There was originally a pair of pendants with the words Feng and Feng carved in the center. So the reason why Zhang Hui didn't hand over the jade pendant was because she knew such a shocking secret. She and Tang Xru had been classmates since they were young. Knowing that Tang Xru was not the Tang family's real daughter, she suspected that Tang Xru was probably the treasure girl that had been carried away. Zhang Hui was jealous that Tang Xru had developed so well and had a powerful financial backer, so she did not want to take out this jade pendant anymore. She did not want Tang Xru to gain the identity of a rich and powerful young miss. When Tang Yu returned home, the two little fellows were still awake, bouncing around the living room. The entire room was filled with the little guy's clear sounds of laughter. "Big brother, you're here to catch me. Hurry up and catch me." Tang Xiaonei had just taken a bath. With her waist-length black hair that was blown dry, she looked as delicate and cute as a little angel. She wore a set of pajamas and ran in circles in the living room. After Tang Xiaorui chased after her for a few rounds, he felt bored, so he stepped on her shoulders and sighed, "I'm not going to catch you, it's not interesting at all." "No, big brother. Play with me." "Don't play with your boring electric toys." Tang Xiaonei pouted her small mouth and used her ability to withdraw her spoiled child, pulling on Tang Xiaorui's small arm and shaking it. Her small appearance was extremely pleasing to the eyes. Although the two little fellows were born in the same lifetime, Tang Xiaorui was a little man. His height was already taller than Tang Xiaonei by half a head since he was young, and now that they were standing together, he truly had the elegance of a big brother. "Mummy is back." Tang Xiaorui saw Tang Yu push open the door and revealed a joyous expression. He ran over and hugged Tang Yu. "Mummy, did you go on a date with some uncle?" Hearing the little guy's questions, Tang Yu could not help but laugh. "You're thinking too much. I just went to see a friend to chat." "Mummy, I would like to meet father once. Is that possible?" Tang Xiaonei also squeezed over. Her two small hands pitifully hugged onto Tang Yu's other leg. Raising her head, she carefully pleaded. When Tang Yu heard his daughter's request, he immediately squatted down, rubbed his daughter's head and gently said, "Xiaonei, didn't you and your brother have a playmate?" "We're not going to look for Dad anymore, okay? Mummy will bring you back to your previous home. The three of us will live our happiest lives." When Tang Xiaorui heard him say that he wanted to return to his previous home, that meant, should I take him and his sister abroad? C55. Although Tang Xiaorui wasn't as mischievous as his sister, he still wished to have his father's company from the bottom of his heart. This could be every child's greatest wish. They hoped that they would also have their own father, the mummy. "Mummy, I beg you." Tang Xiaonei's clear and clean eyes looked at Tang Yu with her delicate and pitiful appearance. Tang Yu immediately looked at her son. She believed that her son would definitely choose to be with her. "Mummy, if I allow father to marry you, would you be willing to stay?" Tang Xiaorui didn't speak, as he was pondering deeply into an even deeper problem. Tang Yu's head exploded as she looked at her son's mature and young appearance. Tang Xiaonei immediately jumped up and cheered, "Yay, Daddy is going to marry Mummy." "Yay, Big brother and I will have daddy and mummy in the future. I'm so happy. Tang Yuyu touched her forehead speechlessly. Had she been scammed by the two little fellows? Xiaorui, your father will never marry mummy in her entire life. Don't be too naive. She is not from the same world as you. Tang Yuyu said very seriously. Cheng Wanlian, who was walking out of the bathroom, suddenly heard Tang Yuyu's words. She couldn't help but sigh and shake her head. This was truly a tragic life. The children were so young, they couldn't even get a whole family, and they looked pitiful. He will marry you. He promised me, Tang Xiaorui said with complete confidence, his small face full of confidence. Xiaorui, you are so young, he must be lying to you. Mummy is not a beautiful country girl. Your dad can tell from one look that he is a man who is very vigilant and requests a lot of things. The people he wants to marry will definitely be the young ladies of those rich families. Tang Yuyu was about to run out of words. She really didn't know how to explain things between adults to her children. Nothing was as simple as that. Father will not lie to you. He is a man, and words are best spoken by men. Mummy, how about? No way. Tang Yuyu almost blurted out. Her tone was extremely resolute, causing the two little fellows to be shocked. Tang Yuyu scratched her long hair with extreme annoyance, and quickly walked to her own bedroom. The two little fellows watched with wide eyes and a helpless expression on their faces. Cheng Wanlian followed Tang Yuyu in. Seeing her sitting by the side of the bed and arranging the bags she brought back, she opened her mouth and said, "You've obtained the things? The people of the Tang clan shouldn't be making things difficult for you anymore, right?" "Yes, I got it." Tang Yuyu's eyes were a little sore as he replied softly, wondering. "Aunt, are you trying to persuade me to stay as well?" Tang Yuyu raised his head to look at the person he trusted the most, and the tears in his eyes rolled over. Cheng Wanlian shook his head. "I won't advise you. You can decide however you feel comfortable. The child is yours, even if they cannot understand you now, but one day when they grow up, they will understand your painstaking efforts." "Will it?" "I was afraid that they would blame me for bringing them away. Why didn't I let them live with Jixiao Han? They should have been living the life of a prince and a princess, but if they had followed me, I would have made them suffer a lot." Tang Yuyu had thought about it very clearly, but the moment she thought of losing her child, she became selfish. Cheng Wanlian didn't know what to say to console her. It was a very difficult decision to make. While the two adults were talking in their room, the two little fellows also ran into their room to discuss something. Tang Xiaorui held his hands behind his back, looking like he was thinking about something, as he walked around the room. Tang Xiaonei carried her cloth doll and watched her brother circle it. After looking around twice, she was about to faint. She immediately asked, "Brother, what do we do?" "Mummy doesn't want us to see father anymore, but I still want to play with father. Daddy treats me so well." "Little idiot, is mummy not good for you?" Tang Xiaorui immediately glared at her furiously. Tang Xiaonei pouted her small mouth, and then fiercely nodded her head like a chick eating rice. "MHMM, mummy treats me really well. But if daddy and mummy are both nice to me, then I'll be even happier." "To be so greedy at such a young age, it's truly amazing when you grow up." Tang Xiaorui lectured her like a little adult. Tang Xiaonei immediately lowered her head, feeling wronged, and said pitifully, "Big brother doesn't want father's land? Didn't brother say before that when we find daddy, daddy would take you to play football with him? Now that daddy is here and you don't like him, you're going to hate him." "Who said I don't like him? But don't you see that mummy doesn't like him? We are not people that the mummy hates, and we do not like them." Tang Xiaorui said angrily. "Sigh, why doesn't mummy like daddy? Daddy is handsome, rich, and loves me. Mummy should like him." Tang Xiaonei completely had the naive thoughts of a child. Tang Xiaorui's mind suddenly lit up. He immediately thought of a way. "Can we call Dad?" Tang Xiaorui suddenly said. Tang Xiaonei immediately nodded vigorously, feeling extremely happy. Okay, I want to hear Daddy's voice, but we don't know how many phone calls Daddy has. I will ask Uncle Lu King for it today. I keep it in my head." At such a young age, Tang Xiaorui already had an amazing memory, and at this moment, it worked. "I'll go get mummy's phone." Tang Xiaorui turned around and ran out. Not long later, he held onto Tang Yuyu's phone, Skillfully unlocking the lock on the screen, he started to pull out the phone. C56. I want to talk to father first. Tang Xiaonai immediately hit her head and couldn't wait to hear her father's voice. Tang Xiaorui's face was filled with displeasure as he stared at his sister. I'm talking about important matters with father. Stand to the side. The phone rang a few times, and was quickly picked up by Jik Xiaohan. His voice also came over. Who? All right, big brother has something important to say to you. Tang Xiaonai heard her father's voice and she was extremely happy to hear that he missed her. However, when she saw her brother's impatient expression, she could only stick out her tongue and give up her seat. Tang Xiaorui was not as charming as his sister, because she was his big brother. Little Rui, are you there? Why aren't you talking? Are you still angry at Dad? When Jik Xiaohan heard that there was no sound from the other side, he immediately became anxious. Daddy, let me ask you something. Are you going to marry my mummy or not? Tang Xiaorui thought that his voice was very serious. Jik Xiaohan did not expect his son to still be insisting on this problem. Sigh. This child was really troubled. As long as you can persuade your mummy to move here, I can consider this matter. Jik Xiaohan also had a headache. This was not a question of whether or not he wanted to marry her. It was basically a question of whether or not that woman was willing to marry him. But mummy said she hates you. The little guy sighed. Jik Xiaohan's tone immediately rose by a few notches. Did she really say that? That's why she hates you. How about you apologize to her? Mummy doesn't like to hold grudges the most. Jik Xiaohan was a little angry in his heart. This woman actually hated him. Hey, does she have the qualifications? All right, I will go and apologize to her tomorrow. You and Xiaonai must help father to speak a few more good words. Do you understand? Jik Xiaohan had already made his decision. For his two precious children, he was willing to sacrifice his pride to take the initiative to show goodwill towards that woman. Really? That's great. Just then, the door to his room was pushed open. Tang Yuyu's voice transmitted over. Tang Xiaorui. Did you use my phone to play games again? I told you how many young master there were. Tang Xiaorui did not expect mummy to suddenly come in, and he was so shocked that his phone fell to the ground. At this time, Jik Xiaohan's voice anxiously came over from the other side of the phone. Son. Xiaonai, are you still there? Daddy still has something to tell you. Tang Yuyu suddenly heard the man's voice and her entire face turned white. She grabbed her phone and immediately cut off the call. The two little guys immediately lowered their heads, looking like they had been caught red-handed. Who called? Tang Yuyu's beautiful eyes immediately swept across their small faces. The two little fellows even knew that they were protecting one another, but they kept their mouths tightly shut, not saying a single word. Tang Yuyu looked at the two little fellows who were determined not to say anything, and suddenly felt his heart becoming chaotic. She didn't want to punish them for their little mistake, so she squatted down and patted their faces. All right, it's getting late. You guys hurry up and go to bed. Mummy, Daddy said he missed me. Tang Xiaonai was someone who was happy, and had always had something to say. At this moment, she only wanted to share the happy things in her heart with Mummy. When Tang Yuyu heard his daughter's words, his heart hurt even more. She kissed her daughter on the cheek and said gently, I know, go to sleep. The next morning, Tang Yuyu had a bad dream all night. The two children were carried away by Jik Xiaohan in all sorts of ways. She ran and cried, chasing him through the night. She was tired and exhausted. Bastard! Tang Yuyu sat up from the bed with a sore back and couldn't help but curse. She first made a call to the kindergarten and asked for a leave of absence from the teacher. Having her aunt take care of the two little fellows at home, she took a taxi to the Tank Lan. Tang Zhu woke up early in the morning and called Zhang Huiyi. The other party no longer answered the phone, causing her face to turn green and black in anger. The servant walked over and told her that Tang Yuyu was here. Tang Zhu's entire body stiffened. She was even more anxious and angry. Tang Yuyu must have come to take the jade pendant. What should he do? The shameless Zhang Huiyi actually did not plan to return the phone to her. Although he did not get the jade pendant, Tang Zhu still came down quickly to see Tang Yuyu. Wondering, why are you here so early? Tang Zhu immediately revealed a hypocritical smile. This was the first time he called her by her name in such a friendly manner. Tang Yuyu felt disgusted, and said with a cold expression, "You still haven't given me my jade pendant." This. Wondering, "Have you noticed that I've called an extra 10 million into your card? How about then can you sell the jade pendant to me for 10 million? Tang Zhu immediately said in a negotiable tone, "Your jade pendant is itself worthless, but I understand that it is extremely valuable to you, so 10 million is not a small sum." Tang Yu had already received the remittance from the bank card a long time ago, and discovered that Tang Zhu had actually given her 60 million. "Then where is the jade pendant?" Tang Yu frowned and asked. "Maybe she lost it. My friend said yesterday that she didn't remember to take it, so she must have lost it. Sorry, I want to know how important that jade pendant is to you. I must keep it well. Now there's no other way. I promise you, I will continue to find that jade pendant for you. If I do, I'll give it to you as soon as possible. Okay? You're going abroad today, don't stay a second longer." Tang Zhu really wished she could give Tang Yu a pair of wings and let her fly out of the country. Tang Yu also couldn't wait to leave. Looking at Tang Zhu's expression, it didn't seem like she was lying, but she was still a little angry in her heart. "Then continue to help me find it. If you find it, return it to me as soon as possible," Tang Yu warned. Of course. It's useless even if I want that jade pendant," Tang Zhu hurriedly promised. C57. It was only then that Tang Yu decided to turn around and leave. Tang Zhu said in an extremely kind tone, wondering, "How about I arrange for my chauffeur to take you to the airport?" "No, I'll take a taxi." Tang Yu rejected him coldly. Tang Yu was also afraid that Tang Zhu would set her eyes on her, so she made the taxi stop at a lively street intersection, and she got off. "Yuchu, take care of your safety and take care of that good child," Cheng Wanlian warned repeatedly with concern. Got it." Tang Yu sat in the carriage and waved goodbye to her aunt. The two little fellows were also very polite and sensible as they waved their hands. In the taxi, Tang Xiaonai was a little emotional. She also kept her head down, and sighed. "All right. The two of you stay alert. Mummy will take you to the amusement park." "Will Daddy go?" Tang Xiaonai immediately asked in anticipation. Tang Yu was startled. She pulled her daughter into her embrace and held her tightly. Her chin rested on her daughter's little head, and said gently, "Xiaonai, your mother will spare no time to accompany you all to grow up. Don't think about father anymore, okay?" Tang Xiaonai did not quite understand, but Tang Xiaorui did understand, and in the end he sighed. The mummy must be extremely afraid. That's why she wanted to take him and her sister away. But he also wanted to repay the fact that he had a father by his side. Kick balls together, play games together, disassemble his favorite machine models, and all this, Tang Xiaorui desired very much. But if Mummy didn't like it, he could only silently forget about all these dreams. Tang Xiaonai quietly and cutely leaned into Mummy's embrace, with a pair of pitch-black bright eyes looking out the window at the unfamiliar scenery. Who knows what she was thinking about? The three of them sat quietly in the taxi. Suddenly, more than a dozen black sedans were like a whirlwind as they swept over, forming a circular shape as they surrounded the taxi on the main road. The taxi driver was so scared that he quickly stepped on the brakes, his face turning pale. "Out! What happened? What are these cars going to do?" The taxi driver immediately suspected that Tang Yu had messed with some kind of gangster or other. His eyes were filled with fear. "It's father's." Tang Xiaorui had already cleverly crawled to the side of the car window, his big black eyes looking out, only to see a tall figure angrily walking over. After Tang Yu heard his son's loud shout, he anxiously looked outside the window with his panicked eyes. Jik Xiaohan had already quickly walked out of the car door. With his big hand, he opened the door. When Tang Yu saw him, he was so scared that his heart almost broke. "Why would this bastard appear here, Daddy?" Tang Xiaonai was also dumbstruck for a moment. When she saw Jik Xiaohan, she became a little excited. Jik Xiaohan originally came over with a stomach full of anger. But when he saw the two little fellows, he forcefully suppressed his anger and knocked on the roof of the car with his fingers. "Get off, I have something to say to you." Tang Yu looked at the surrounding high-grade cars, his heart thumping. It looks like he wouldn't be able to leave today. "Mummy, Daddy has come to find us. Let's just go home with Daddy. Tang Xiaonai immediately revealed a pitiful expression and pleaded as her small hands grabbed onto Tang Yuyu's hand. Tang Yuyu accepted his fate and sighed, then nodded. All right, I will go back with you. Yay! Tang Xiaorui could not hide the small flame in his heart. When he heard that Mummy agreed to return with his father, he raised his two small hands and cheered out loud. But when he turned around and saw Mummy's ugly expression, he immediately put his hands down. Jik Xiao Han stared fixedly at Tang Yuyu, as if he could see through her soul. Tang Xiaorui climbed down the carriage himself, but Tang Xiaonai reached out his short hand for Jik Xiao Han to hug. Of course, Jik Xiao Han very gently held his little girl tightly in his arms, and said to the slow Tang Yuyu, "Where are you bringing my child?" Tang Yuyu didn't say anything, and she had nothing to say to this man. Seeing that she was speechless, Jik Xiao Han immediately gave her a look. Lu King directly walked in front of the driver. "Where is the destination?" "Machine. The airport." Driver brother very helplessly betrayed Tang Yuyu. Jik Xiao Han's handsome face darkened. "Daddy, don't scare my mummy. My mummy is timid." Tang Xiaonai, who was lying in Jik Xiao Han's embrace, turned around with her bright eyes, and very shrewdly begged for mercy on behalf of her mother. Jik Xiao Han originally wanted to teach this disobedient woman a lesson, but his daughter's words immediately extinguished the flames in his heart. "Xiaonai, don't be afraid, Daddy will bring you home." Jik Xiao Han directly ignored Tang Yuyu, holding her daughter in one arm and holding her son's small hand with the other. When he thought that he could smoothly carry the two little fellows to the carriage, he saw his son shake off his big hands, turned around and ran to Tang Yuyu's side. His chubby little hands firmly grabbed onto one of Mummy's fingers. "Mummy, let's go together." Tang Yuyu could only nod her head and head towards the car. "Xiaonai, can you and your brother ride in that car with Uncle Lu King? Father and the mummy would like to talk to you alone." Jik Xiao Han started to coax her daughter. "Amen, hurry up and reconcile father and mummy." "Xiaonai doesn't want to see you two arguing." Although the little guy didn't understand why the two adults looked to be in a bad mood, her only wish was for her father to get back together with mummy. Tang Yuyu also had a lot of things she wanted to say to this man, so she also squatted down and said to her son, "You should go take that carriage as well. Take good care of your little sister." Tang Xiaorui nodded his head, but his eyes were filled with worry. Daddy sent them away. Could it be to bully mummy? However, he believed that on account of him and Xiaonai the idiot, his father would definitely show mercy to the mummy. C-58 obediently follow him back. Watching the two little fellows get into the carriage, Jik Xiao Han's cold face was finally covered with a layer of frost. Tang Yuyu's delicate and pretty face was also extremely ugly. "Do you know how important they are to me? You want to take them away from me without saying a word now?" My reaction should be that of all parents. When Tang Yuyu said these words, his tone was unavoidably agitated and angry. Jik Xiao Han narrowed his long and narrow eyes, then said lightly, "Sorry, I was indeed too impatient." "What's the point of you telling me that you're sorry? I just hope you don't take the children away. I can't leave them." Tang Yuyu did not want to hear his apology as this would not solve the underlying problem. "Then, what method do you have to make everyone happy?" Actually, Jik Xiao Han had already considered this question after he calmed down last night. Although he had spent half a day with the children yesterday, he was still able to rationally realize that the children couldn't leave this woman alone. As the father of a child, although he really wanted to snatch the children back, the child already had his own thoughts, so he could not forcefully separate them from his mother. How could he bear to harm his own child in such a cruel matter? That was why he had planned to properly discuss this matter with Tang Yuyu today. When he was on his way to find her, he received a call from the bodyguard that he had arranged for her. He said that Tang Yuyu had brought along 3 trips and caught a taxi, as if he was going to travel far. When he heard this news, he immediately rushed over. Fortunately, he had intercepted their car. Tang Yuyu bit her lower lip, but she was still flustered. Previously, Jik Xiao Han had a bandit's face, but she was still able to scold him in a fit of rage. But now, When he used such a calm and rational tone to talk to her about the child, she realized her mind was blank. "I don't know." She lowered her head and expressionlessly answered him. "How about this? The child stays in my home for a few days, and then he stays in your home for a few more days." Jik Xiao Han felt that this was more fair. "I don't want to be separated from them for a day. Let them follow me. If you want to see them, you can come over anytime." Tang Yuyu bit his lower lip as he replied. "Tang Yuyu, do you want our children to be exposed? Do you know how many enemies I have? To let them know that I suddenly have 2 children, this is definitely a disaster for them." Jik Xiao Han suddenly warned her with a serious face. Hearing that the child was in danger, Tang Yuyu suddenly raised her head. Her 2 beautiful eyes stared at him with even more anger and shock. "Then you shouldn't have come to find them. If I let them live by my side, all these dangers can be avoided." Jik Xiao Han's goal was this. Tang Yuyu's 2 small hands suddenly tightened. This man was so hateful, she actually said those words to scare her. Wasn't it just to make her compromise? "But the children can't leave me." Tang Yuyu would also scare him. "So, the best way is for you to move in with me." "I don't want to live with you," Tang Yuyu immediately said. Jik Xiao Han sarcastically said, "If it weren't for the fact that you are the mother of the child, would I have let you stay there?" Tang Yuyu was speechless. This man looked down on everyone and felt like she deserved a beating. "I have a lot of rooms. If you really don't want to live on the mountainside with me, you can live in a villa by the sea. We are separated by several miles, which will avoid the embarrassment of meeting each other," Jik Xiao Han said indifferently. Tang Yuyu was stunned for a moment. Actually, what he said just now was much more pleasing to her ears than yesterday, when he didn't seem to take her seriously. "If you are willing to lend me that room for the time being, this kind of arrangement is not impossible. Only, I hope you won't interfere in my life." When Tang Yuyu brought his 2 children to the airport earlier, he had been soft-hearted for a moment. When the children mentioned Daddy, their eyes were filled with longing and anticipation, making Tang Yuyu's heart ache. If she had been happy with her children before, it was because they had never known that they had a father. Now, it would be impossible to erase this man's shadow from the innocent and young minds of the children. Even though she wanted to be a qualified mother, but no matter how much care her mother gave them, it couldn't compare to the feeling a father's love gave them. At this moment, Tang Yuyu still decided to let the children's childhood not be devoid of fatherly love. Of course, the reason why she made all these concessions and considerations was because of the children. Personally, Jik Xiao Han was just a stranger to her. Jik Xiao Han was sure that this woman would agree to it, because she had no other choice. "Of course, we don't interfere with each other." The man's thin lips curled upwards as he smiled with an unfathomable meaning. The direction the car headed towards was Jia family's villa. Inside the carriage, Tang Yuyu tried her best to distance herself from the man. Just a moment ago, his nerves had been stretched taut, and he hadn't realized that this man's aura was so powerful that it would give others a fatal feeling of oppression. At this moment, when the deal was made and her nerves relaxed, she suddenly realized that the aura that the man beside her gave her was so dangerous. C59. Jik Xiao Han's serene eyes also inadvertently swept towards the woman sitting beside him. When he saw her pair of large, clear, and innocent eyes, he suddenly thought of his daughter's eyes, which were also similarly clean and alert, without a single blemish. It turned out that she had inherited her genes. One had to admit that those eyes were so beautiful that it would make one's heart beat faster. When she looked at you with a hint of panic in her eyes, there was an impulse to peep at you with her bright and limpid eyes. Tang Yuyu's scalp went numb once again. Although she had heard quite a few men flattering her, she still felt that this man's words were extremely ear-piercing. At this moment, the morning sun shone through the window and onto her flawless white face. Her skin that was like porcelain jade, caused Jik Xiao Han to be slightly absent-minded. Putting aside her stubborn temper, she was still very pretty. At this moment, she wore a ponytail, revealing her fair and plump forehead. Under her delicate and picturesque eyebrows, there were 2 sets of large eyes that resembled jade green springs, a round and pretty nose, and a pair of delicate and exquisite little mouth at the bottom. The lips were extremely beautiful, as if they were accidentally touched by 2 rose petals. Her figure was also very slim, and her skin was almost the same color as her face, white and clean. No matter who it was, they would be tempted by such a woman. Jik Xiao Han suddenly thought of the man that she went to see last night, who had come to grab her small hands time and time again. It must be because of that. Jik Xiao Han narrowed his cold eyes in displeasure. Just thinking of how this woman would throw herself at another man, why was he so unhappy? It must be because she was his child's mummy. He hoped that she would act as a good role model for his parents and not act so intimately with other men. Tang Yuyu realized that this man's gaze, whether intentionally or unintentionally, was still on her, and she felt goosebumps all over her body. Fortunately, they had finally reached their destination. Under Lu Qing's care, the two little fellows looked so excited that their little faces were completely red. It could be seen how happy they were to be able to return to their father's side. "Mummy, how is the discussion between you and Further going? Have you finished talking? Shall we not go?" With Tang Xiaonei's straightforward personality, she had nothing to say. At this moment, what she wanted to know the most was whether or not Father and Mummy had made up. Tang Yuyu crouched down and gently caressed his daughter's head, saying softly, "Yes, we won't leave, we'll stay and live together with your father." "Really?" "Yeah, Xiaonei is so happy, thank you Mummy." As soon as the little guy got proud, it immediately kissed Tang Yuyu on the cheek. Tang Yuyu looked at her son, who was smiling at the side like a little fool. Although her son had a reserved personality and wasn't as talkative as her daughter, she could tell that her son really wanted her to stay. From the looks of it, her decision was right. At the side, Jik Xiao Han's eyes inadvertently fell on the woman who was squatting in front of the child. Under the sunlight, her gentle appearance made him absent-minded once again. Seeing her imposing and angry look, at that moment, her gentle and beautiful face actually made Jik Xiao Han's heart palpitate. Tang Yuyu straightened his body and looked at the two little fellows playing merrily by his side. She sighed softly. As long as the children were happy, even if she suffered a little, it wouldn't be worth mentioning. "I'll ask Uncle Yuan to prepare some household items for you, and I'll send some servants for you to order." Jik Xiao Han looked at the child who was playing around with him, and an unconscious look of gentleness appeared on his handsome face. Tang Yuyu nodded his head. "Thank you, but I don't have to be sent over. I can take care of myself. I was sent to look after my children." Things that Jik Xiao Han had decided on have never changed. Tang Yuyu looked at him with her beautiful eyes, but the man turned his gaze to the child. "All right, you just have to follow the arrangements." "I don't care." Tang Yuyu also wouldn't stand on ceremony with him. Since everything was for the sake of a child, she would naturally happily accept it. "Can I borrow a car for you? I have something I need to do." Since Tang Yuyu decided to stay, naturally she had to return the money to Tangsru. Jik Xiao Han turned and said to Lu Qing, "Give her the car key." Tang Yuyu took the car key, ignoring the man with the powerful aura beside him. He walked straight towards the child. "Xiaonei, Xiaoru, Mummy is out on some business. Why don't you two play with your father first?" Tang Xiaonei and Tang Xiaoru, the two smart little devils, looked at each other, as if they had understood something. She immediately nodded her head sensibly. "Okay, Mummy, drive carefully." Tang Yuyu looked at the expression the little guy had just exchanged, and couldn't help but laugh. It seemed that in the future, no matter what decision he made, he couldn't be too hasty, as the treasures all had their own ways of thinking. Tang Yuyu pressed the button on the car key, and saw a luxurious black car beside them light up. She used to have a crappy car overseas, but she wasn't used to driving such a fancy car. "But," she said, looking around at the cars, "which one isn't worth millions? Do you need me to accompany you?" Jik Xiao Han suddenly walked over and asked with a low voice. Seeing his enlarged handsome face, Tang Yuyu immediately waved her hand. "No need, I'll go myself." If Jik Xiao Han accompanied him, the whole world would be in chaos. Tangsru would be so angry that he would vomit blood. The woman's refusal instantly caused someone's face to turn ugly. Ever since he was born, this was the first time he had shown so much concern for a woman. However, he was mercilessly rejected. CEO Jia was unhappy. C60. Tang Yuyu stepped on the throttle of the car and the sedan instantly sped away. Jik Xiao Han frowned. Why was this woman leaving in such a hurry? Could it be that he was going to meet her old lover again? Daddy, how did you coax Mummy back? After Tang Xiaonai played with her brother for a few rounds, she laid down beside Jix Xiaohan's legs and hugged onto one of his long legs. Jix Xiaohan's emotions, which he had calmed down with great difficulty, started to fluctuate once again after hearing his son's words. He took a step forward and easily grabbed his son's hand. Xiaorui, Dad is asking you. Do you know which man your mummy likes? I know, but I won't tell you. Tang Xiaorui made a face at him. Jix Xiaohan immediately squatted down, held his son and stood in front of him. He said with a serious face, Xiaorui, tell Daddy that Daddy will reward you with a toy. No, I have never betrayed the mummy. I am just a little man. I want to keep my word. Tang Xiaorui imitated his serious expression and said. Jix Xiaohan was speechless. He did not expect his son's mouth to be so tight, so he could only turn around and ask his daughter, Xiaonai, do you know? Know what? Tang Xiaonai blinked her eyes wide. Which uncle does your mummy like? Jix Xiaohan tried his best to speak with a gentle tone. Tang Xiaonai Yiting immediately extended 5 short hands, and held each of her fingers up. Uncle Jack, Uncle Wang, Uncle Lee. Oh, Daddy, I can't count a finger. Jix Xiaohan. Tang Yuyu roared angrily in her heart. Tang Yuyu, come back and explain yourself. Tang Xiaorui smiled as he looked at her stupid little sister. She had a serious expression on his face as he counted the number of people in the mummy for his father. Tang Xiaonai expressed that her memory was not good enough. Her pitch-black eyes looked at Tang Xiaorui. Brother, can you count clearly? Forget it. Stop counting. Daddy doesn't want to know. Jix Xiaohan's heart felt even more stifled. He also did not know why he felt so bad when he heard that the woman had so many suitors. Tang Yuyu drove the car into the city. At this time, Tang Zhu should not be home. In order to find her as soon as possible, Tang Yuyu called Lu Xuanchen and asked him about her location at Sky Feather Media Group. Tang Yuyu had to navigate to find the place, and when she looked up, she saw a huge building. This was the center of the Entertainment Circle, a company where all the famous celebrities gathered. When Lu Xuanchen heard that Tang Yuyu wanted to come over, he had already been waiting at the entrance of the hall. He kept looking at the cabs outside the door, looking up and down, but he didn't expect a luxury car worth millions to stop right in front of him. The one who came out of the car was the Tang Yuyu he had to wait for. Lu Xuanchen's expression was extremely shocked and astonished. According to his knowledge, it was simply impossible for Tang Yuyu to drive such an expensive car. Yulong, you bought this car? After Lu Xuanchen recovered from his shock, he asked. Tang Yuyu shook his head. No, I borrowed a friend's. Lu Xuanchen's face showed that he understood, but he was secretly surprised. Tang Yuyu had just returned to his country. How could he know such a rich friend? Where's Tang Zhu? I have something important to talk to her about. I'll take you up. Lu Xuanchen suppressed his curiosity. In the elevator, Lu Xuanchen was still probing. Yuju, after so many years, have you become a boyfriend yet? Tang Yuyu looked slightly surprised, and then replied, no, I've always been single. Hearing this reply, Lu Xuanchen could not help but secretly rejoice, and deliberately said, I have also always been single. Is that so? Tang Yuyu chuckled, but the lake of his heart could no longer fluctuate. In the past, she felt that Lu Xuanchen was the type of boyfriend that she wanted to find in the future, but now, she was dragging her own daughter away, even though he knew that he wasn't worthy. He didn't think of it anymore. Seeing Tang Yuyu walking over, Tang Zhu's beautiful face instantly turned ugly. Why are you still here? Tang Zhu rushed forward and directly questioned her. She had sent someone to lose Tang Yuyu, which made her feel depressed and uneasy, so she sent someone to the airport to guard her. However, more than an hour had passed, and there was no reply. She felt even more fooled. At the moment, Tang Yuyu was actually still here. How could Tang Zhu not be angry? She wished that he could just throw her out of the country and never come back. On the way here, Tang Yuyu had already gone to the bank to transfer all the money that he had transferred to her. Tang Zhu had been doing her hairstyle just now and did not hear the short message from her phone. That was why she was so shocked by Tang Yuyu's appearance. "I'm not leaving. I've already transferred your money to your card. Take a look at it," Tang Yuyu said indifferently, ignoring Tang Zhu's furious face that was warped to the point of warping. "Tang Yuyu, you liar, you are breaking your promise," Tang Zhu roared at her. Tang Yuyu replied to her expressionlessly, "You're the one who went back on your word. You said that you would give me the jade pendant early in the morning, and even now, you still haven't given it to me." Tang Zhu angrily glared at him. She indeed could not refute what Tang Yuyu had said. "I've already returned the money to you. The paper we signed has no value at all. In the future, don't come and disturb my life again." After Tang Yuyu finished speaking, he turned around and prepared to leave. "You're not allowed to leave." Tang Zhu rushed forward, extended her hand, and blocked her way. "You still haven't explained everything yet." Tang Yuyu smirked and said, "What else do you want me to say?" "I've said everything I need to say." Tang Zhu glanced at Lu Xuanchen, and said to him, "You go out first, I have something to say to her alone." Lu Xuanchen looked at the two of them and furrowed his brows. He did not understand what else the two of them had to say.